All right, so welcome back. Hope you're enjoying your time here online with me. But today we're starting the third lesson in the biology unit. This is going to be once again just parts of a cell and their jobs for the most part, and you should start getting an idea what they look like or where they fit in diagrams, because the next assignment or the next lesson, lesson 4, and its assignment is going to be actually I'll show you right here kind of what the cells look like, and then you're going to be doing diagrams and jobs and things like that of all of them. So that's coming up in the next lesson. This is another kind of review of the parts of a cell. You're going to have 2 more of these, so you got basically 4 lessons going over in different ways what the jobs and parts of cells are and things like that. So this is lesson 3, and today you're looking at this paper right here, the cell review paper. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go through it and underline some of the most important things for you, so you kind of know what to focus on, because there's a lot of information. You're getting 4 different sheets with all this stuff, so it can be a little intimidating because you have all these different things. So I'm going to highlight the most important stuff. You need to get that out, and then at the end of this assignment, you'll see there's a few questions here that you'll have to go through, and you should have no problem going through. That's going to be your assignment number 3, is going to be answering these questions at the back of this section and sending me a picture of you doing that. So let's start the lesson. So you have already learned about the structure of the cell. This is going to serve as a review. The cell is the basic unit of life. That's always something we're going to hear. The individual cell performs the same life functions as the whole organism. Nothing too much here. They got different jobs. Here we go. What's going to happen? Okay, what's the most important stuff here? The basic building blocks. This basically means that all cells have these. Some might have specialized jobs. Some might do different things. They might have parts missing or extra parts, but they're all going to have a cell membrane, a nucleus, and cytoplasm. And you should know what those mean, right? You should know those definitions. Those are important. Cell membrane surrounds it, controls what goes in and out. The nucleus is the brain where the genetic activity happens. The cytoplasm is the liquid or the goop that the other organelles float around in. You should know that, right? So really every cell is going to have a cell membrane. Don't forget, in a plant, it's a cell wall on top of that, extra. But every cell has a membrane, cytoplasm, all the other area where the other things float in, and a nucleus. So you got to remember that. That's the core. What else can we look at here? These are found in most cells. Cells exist in many different shapes. You don't need to do this. Don't worry about that. Not that important. So if you need to pause and you want to circle or highlight anything that I did here, underline what I underlined if you like, just so you know what to focus on. We're going to move around to the next page. Now, this is a great little diagram. Here is a plant cell. This is actually a really nice and clear diagram. You're going to notice some similar things, right? They're both going to have a plant cell, has like this eye area. So does the animal cell. They also have, coming off of the nucleus, they have these kind of squiggly things here, right? Same thing there, right? That's the endoplasmic reticulum. There's 2 kinds of endoplasmic reticulum. We'll get into that later. But these are good diagrams. I would say these are close to something that you would get on a test. So you can go through, and what I would do is I would start memorizing these. Know what the parts are. That could be on something like this with an animal cell. I could show you a diagram like that, and you should be able to get the same thing, even though it's a completely different view, right? You should still be able to tell, well, the main thing with an eye would be the nucleus, the ER, right? Mitochondria are going to look kind of similar. I could also show you a picture of a plant cell right here, right? I could show you a plant cell like that. You've got to remember that the biggest thing in a plant is going to be the vacuole. Another thing you'd want to know about a plant cell is that it has a wall around it, right? And the green things are chloroplast, as we've talked about before. I could show you a plant cell that looks like this. That's a little bit easier. That might be something more good to copy on a test that I would give you. So You got to be looking at different versions of the same kinds of cells from different books, different illustrations, different diagrams, and be able to identify these parts. That's coming up in the next few days. So you got to get comfortable with that. So this diagram you can study. I'm going to flip this over. The previous cell drawings contain the standard parts of the cells. Blah, blah, blah. Looking through a microscope. This electron microscope, you don't need to know that right now, but if we ever get around to it, we'll do some extra work on microscopes later. I might do the lab for you. Let's talk about the cell membrane. What's important here? You should give this a read. Maybe pause it, give it a read, and then I can tell you what's important. What you need to know is that the cell membrane surrounds the contents of the cell. You don't need to know that it consists of 2 layers of fat. That's called the phospholipid bilayer. It's kind of cool to know, but not too crazy to know, right? You can go to the diagram that I showed you before, right? That's kind of how a cell membrane is made right there. You can see 2 layers of fat with these different proteins in it. This is important, that a cell membrane is selectively permeable. You can say, once again, it is the gatekeeper. Now, for this assignment, you don't need to write these things down. You think you're cool, you know everything, you don't have to. I'm not going to make you take pictures of this one. But I'd suggest if I'm making notes, you should be making notes too, right? It's going to help you remember this. It's going to be a really different way of studying, so you've got to get used to something like this. And this is an extra section here, right? A cell wall that's a great description of what a cell wall actually is. And remember, cell walls are only in plants. That's a cell wall is found in plants but not animals, and it's made out of something called cellulose. Cellulose actually is what we digest as we consider cellulose fiber. So when we're eating a plant and we say get lots of fiber, that's because it has thick cell walls in whatever we're eating. What's something with lots of fiber? Whole wheat, because they keep that cell wall in the processing of the food. And as we digest it, our bodies can't digest cellulose. So it kind of scrapes the inside of our guts as it passes through our digestive system. That's considered fiber. But fiber is cellulose. The cellulose is quite rigid because it's the outside of the cell. It's going to make it stiff because a plant doesn't have a skeletal system. Cell walls allow the passage of all material and are considered to be permeable. Yep, stuff can pass through a cell wall. Because remember, in a cell wall, right here, it can get through cell walls easily. But where it stops is the membrane, which is behind the wall. Parts of the cell, we'll flip over here. The cell, the nucleus and organelles. Here we are. The nucleus is the largest and most easily recognized part of the cell. Here's some history about how it was discovered. This is important. I draw an arrow there because DNA, genetics, all is because of DNA inside of the nucleus. That's important. Of course, read this handout. I'm just skimming it for you. I don't want to make a 25-minute video wasting your time here. 3 parts of the nucleus. Sorry that I used the marker on the other side there. But the nuclear membrane, that's going to be what surrounds the nucleus. That's part 1. The nucleus itself is the whole thing. And the nucleolus is the eye, right? Let's see. The nuclear membrane. Similar to a cell membrane, except it covers the nucleus. It's going to control what goes in and out. Chromosomes, that's what we call DNA and genes in the chromosomes. Chromosomes contain all the information the cells need to reproduce itself. This is kind of cool. Don't need to know that necessarily, but red blood cells are one of the only ones that can't reproduce. They're actually made. Kind of neat. Let's go to the next page. The nucleolus. There are several different nuclei in the nucleoplasm. Don't worry about that. What you need to know is the eye of the nucleus. The nucleolus is this section. Now, some organelles that you're going to need to know about here. First one is the endoplasmic reticulum. And endoplasmic reticulum is always going to look like something like this, and it's going to be right next to the nucleus. So if you got your nucleus here, this thing coming like this is the nucleus. And the stuff close is smooth, and as it gets further out, there's going to be these dots on it. So the closer to the nucleus, it's going to be the smooth ER, and the further away, it's going to be the rough ER. And what are these little dots? Well, they're ribosomes. Ribosomes attach to the ER. So there's a rough endoplasmic reticulum and a smooth endoplasmic reticulum. History, that's okay. Let's see. What could we say that is the most important? This is important right here. Some of the ER is smooth and some of it is rough, dotted with ribosomes. So you can see very clearly, smooth ER, rough ER. I might have had that a little backwards up here, but you can see if there's dots on it, it's rough ER. If it's no dots, it is smooth ER. Let's flip along. Many of the ribosomes that pass through the nuclear envelope settle onto the ER because that's the sites where proteins are manufactured. The ribosome's function was described in the 1950s when scientists observed through a microscope they produce large quantities of proteins. Much energy is used in making these proteins, and this is the key right here. The ER is a transportation mechanism which moves proteins through a cell. That's very important. The ER is a transportation system which moves proteins through the cell, which brings us to our friend. If we were thinking of this as a factory, the ER might be the roads and the highways, but you got to pack up your stuff before you ship it. So this is where we come to this, the Golgi complex. The Golgi complex is responsible for the packing and storing of proteins. So we're going to pack and store them in the Golgi, and we're going to move them in the ER. The Golgi complex looks like a series of folds, one on top of another. Basically, a Golgi complex almost looks, if you look here, it almost looks exactly like an ER. Very similar. It's going to have that same pattern of stuff like this. The difference is, if I draw it here, if I had a cell and I had the nucleus, the one close to the nucleus is always the ER, and anything that looks very similar but is further away is the Golgi. All right? So the Golgi complex packs and stores. You've got to know that. You could find that in here. You're going to be putting that down on other sheets very soon. Don't need to worry about that much. This is kind of interesting. This will be something else you need to know. The Golgi complex also packages certain enzymes separated into separate organelles called lysosomes. So that's important. Makes lysosomes. If you think I'm going through this too fast, just pause, write down the notes, and read the section. I'm not going to read the whole thing for you. So you need to pause if you want, even rewind, read everything, add the notes that I've been adding. These are only going to help you because on the next sheet, in 2 lessons, you're going to be having to say all of the functions of all these different parts, right? And some of them you're going to be like wondering, where am I going to find what all these things are, right? How am I going to know what all these things mean? Well, you're going to find a lot of it from here, and if you've taken the notes, you're going to be in good shape. Otherwise, you might want to re-watch this video later. I know that's your real dream come true. So this brings us to our assignment. So this is assignment 3. All right, and this will be due in a day because this is only a 1-day assignment, really. So you read and you do these. So I'll give you a little bit of guidance here, right? So you're going to do all of these questions, and you're going to submit a picture and submit it to me for assignment number 3. So describe the path a protein molecule take from the place where they are produced. So the first thing you're going to have to do is find where they're produced. Where are proteins produced? You have it in your notes that we just talked about, where they're made. And then where it's produced to the place where they are used in the cytoplasm. So where do they move? Where do they go? Maybe where they are packed. You got to tell a little story of a protein molecule. In a cell, you're always looking up here for a second. These proteins, right? Ribosomes make protein, they attach. I might have just given you a bit of the answer there, but you got to talk about that. So you got to look through your notes and find protein and kind of go through everything and see the path of a protein. And I'll be giving you the answers. Do your best on this one. This is a pretty tricky question. The next one's fun. This is kind of a cool analogy. If the endoplasmic reticulum is the transportation system, then the Golgi complex is the warehouse and packaging. Explain that. That's the last two paragraphs or the last two main parts we looked at. So you could just go back and say, why do we call the endoplasmic reticulum the transportation? So make one sentence for that and then say why we'd call the Golgi the warehouse and packaging, and you can do that there. The next part, what part of the nucleus replicates itself as part of the reproduction process or the reproductive process? And what I mean by reproductive, I don't mean sex here, folks. I'm talking about a cell making a copy of itself, because cells are always multiplying, and we call that reproduction of cells. So what part of a cell replicates itself? You're probably going to have to go back, and you're going to have to go to the nucleus section, right? And you're going to have to look nucleus, okay, nucleus. Oh, I found some stuff on the nucleus here, right? And you're going to look what replicates. Why is the packaging of proteins in the Golgi complex an important part of the cell's function? Look up the Golgi section, right? You're going to find out why that's important. Once you're done, everything, take a picture, send it to me, submit it for assignment number 3. Coming up, we have for lesson and assignment 4, a lot of stuff that honestly, there's not going to be much of a lesson. I'm going to be telling you what to do. You're going to be looking at this stuff, saying the main jobs of the main parts, and doing some diagrams, a little bit of matching, and a little bit of fill in the blanks, all about cells. So that's coming up in assignment and lesson 4 soon. If you have any questions, always contact me. No problem. I'm ready to help. Have a good day.